We'll go start with Angela and we'll go down. I have no idea where Amber Hardy is or Jake Johnson. I guess they're not appearing anywhere. They did not, I did talk to Jake a long time ago and Amber both. That's why I put them there. I have had no conversations with the other people who are not here. Jill Coford, John Johnson, and Matt Quinn. I have no idea, they didn't answer me, so that tells me a lot. Pardon me. We also have a thing called Vote 411. You go on vote411.org. You will see answers to questions that the candidates have been asked when you put in your address. Those who do not answer questions, give me a good message too. So be sure you check that out because it does give you some ideas of what their stances are. I have no patience for people who will not meet with their constituents. I'm sorry. All right, let's go ahead and start. We'll start with Stacy. She has 2 minutes to tell you all about her.
Just to clarify, do we get to do an introduction and a closing?
Yes.
Speech? Okay. I don't want to tell you the same thing twice. All right. Are we good? We're started? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Burnell. Thank you so much for those of you who are here, being civically engaged with us. As candidates, we definitely see a lot of each other, and as engaged citizens, I'm sure you all are seeing a lot of each other as well. So thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. I am currently on the Ogden School Board. I 2 years ago won that election as an underdog, as a first-time candidate running against a two-term incumbent. And everyone told me every step of the way, even my supporters, that I wouldn't win, that statistically the odds were against me. And I took that and okay, thank you for that. Thank you for knowing the statistic, but I'm going to work hard anyway. At the same time, I was campaigning. The job opportunity of a lifetime crossed my path to come on board as the first ever diversity, equity, and inclusion manager for a local basketball team called the Utah Jazz. And I applied for that job thinking I was not going to get that job. And after a series of rigorous interviews, in fact, I was in this room doing a meet and greet for the school board race. And I got the call that I was offered the job with the Utah Jazz. And I started on November 1st of 2022. And a week later, I won the school board race. So my life went from pretty average to above average in the span of a week. In the year and a half that I was with the Utah Jazz, doing the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I'm so passionate about. It became a very bad, scary place. Legislation was targeting the work that I was doing, and ultimately that was part of the reason I decided to become for the state legislature. So I want to disrupt the supermajority. We have an 81% Republican body, 75% men, and I'm excited to bring a little bit of spiciness to the state legislature.
It's hard to follow. I've been in that seat before. Well, hello everyone. I'm Angela Chaburka, and I'm running for House District 9. And I really appreciate my opponent Jake Sawyer for being here with me, and appreciate the League for hosting this event, and for all of you for coming. I should first say that I am a member of the League of Women Voters, but at this time I don't participate in any of these activities with them because I like to stay neutral. But I do appreciate their efforts to make sure that people get out the vote, and also to hold events like this so people can talk to candidates. So I've been serving on the Ogden City Council for about 6.5 years, almost 7 years now. And I live not too far from here. Lived in Ogden for about 20 years. And we came here, my husband got a job at Weber State. That's what brought us out here, and we've just loved living in this community, engaging with everyone. And when I saw that this was an open seat for House District 9, I thought it was a great opportunity to get out there, ensure that we have some different voices involved in this process, and to bring the things that I know about and my expertise to that seat as well. So in my day job, I work on health disparities and looking at communities and seeing how people have access to healthcare, what those barriers are. And then also in my past, I was a public school teacher, so I was looking at issues that maybe students and families face that are very similar. And that often has to do with how we build our communities, how our cities are built, whether people have access to great quality food, have access to jobs with livable wages, quality affordable housing, and those kinds of things. So I'm really excited about bringing that expertise to the House, and I look forward to engaging in these questions. Thank you.
All right, my name is Jake Sawyer. I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you so much for putting this on. I'm glad to be sitting here with you guys. I think it's very important that we have all candidates at these events to be able to talk to the constituents that we're going to represent, right? We all are sitting up here fighting for your vote. I think that having you here and having more people here, having more events like this is exactly what we need to be doing. So thank you very much for putting this on. I'm a born and bred Weber County kid. I grew up in South Ogden, graduated from Bonneville High School. I served 2 terms as a volunteer for the Weber County Republican Party. I was a chairman, and during that time, my focus was bringing more people into the fold of the Republican Party, showing them what the party can be, what we're about, what we support. Doing that, we ended up with more representation on a state governing board. We also raised over $127,000 for the party. That was 5 times more than anything they'd ever seen. It was just doing events like this, getting people involved and getting them to know the issues and candidates. My view going into the House legislature, I want to focus on affordable housing, keeping property taxes low, and supporting our law enforcement. I have ideas on how to make housing affordability a lot lower for younger families, especially my age group, right? I look forward to talking about that tonight. If you have any questions, my phone number, email, everything is on my website at Jake for Weber. Thanks so much.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I like to thank everybody who has taken the time to be here tonight to care about what happens with representation in this district. My name is Rosemary Lesser. I currently serve as the representative in House District 10, which runs from Riverdale all the way over to Ogden. And I am delighted to have this opportunity to share not only what I have accomplished as a representative in the last 4 years, but also my hopes and dreams for the future. Being here tonight as an elected representative is quite honestly something I never would have predicted 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago. And, you know, I didn't serve in a political party. I never held a political party office before. And quite honestly, even now, I prefer the description public servant instead of politician. I mean, how many people think that the term politician gives you the heebie-jeebies? But for me, service is what defines who I am. Whether caring for families as an OBGYN doctor, as I did for several decades, and hearing the countless stories from thousands of families, not only about their health concerns, but of all the other things that affected their life, whether it be their jobs, their concerns about the mental health of their kids, the education, housing, all of those concerns were things that I believe that I channel in the legislature, all of those issues that people brought to me. So I look forward to sharing how I've delivered results in the course of these last 4 years by working collaboratively with my colleagues in the legislature. And I look forward to sharing a vision for a bright Utah with all of you. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Okay, we'll start, Stacy started that round, so we'll start with Angela. Both Stacy and Angela are members of the league. We encourage candidates to be members of the league. I never tell them anything about this. They don't get an email, I block them from everything. So they don't know anything that's happening. They do attend some meetings sometimes that have something to do with redistricting or something that they have the knowledge about, but they know nothing about anything. Well, that sounds good, didn't it? Okay, Angela.
Okay.
Affect we want all of you. Most candidates say that they will listen to the voters they represent. Describe for me what you think listen means.
Oh, that's a really tricky question. Well, to me, listening is, as you mentioned before, attending community events and seeing, what people are talking about in the community. It also involves having one-on-one conversations with my constituents. My cell phone and email are widely available and I do respond. So a lot of times somebody will text me or they'll give me a call and then we'll talk about a specific issue. Because a lot of times, especially in city council, I'm assuming similarly in the legislature, people don't really think about these issues until it's affecting them directly. And then they get a notice of some kind or they see it in the paper and then they want to know more information. Number one, yeah, I'm available to people. I go to where people are talking about issues in the community. And then I also take what I'm hearing from them and then try to synthesize that with the information that I have as an elected official and also share information back with them so that then we can kind of talk through it together and then come up with ideas for how we might change the ordinance or the legislation so it might meet their needs or push back completely if it's something that we didn't realize was an issue. Because that often happens that people will make these decisions in rooms where the people that are affected aren't there. So I always like to try to involve those people as early as we can in that process so we understand that the best.
To me, listening is listening to understand, right? The biggest thing that I'm getting from people when I'm knocking doors or I'm making phone calls is they just want to be heard, right? They don't want to be given a platitude. They don't want to be given some statistic, nothing like that. They want to feel like they've been heard, that you know what their issue is, and you're actually going to try and help solve that problem. That's what I plan on bringing to the legislature, is somebody that's willing to sit and listen in comfortable conversations and be able to try and come up with a resolution.
I love that we are talking about listening. This is something that is critical to political discourse at every level of government. As Angela spoke of, her experience with listening as a city council member is something she brings to this. For all of us, we recognize that listening is how we are able to process how a person feels. Now, I shared with you about the thousands of people that I cared for, and listening was absolutely critical to that. To be a good doctor, I had to listen. To be able to formulate a good diagnosis, I had to listen. And most importantly, with listening, it allows us to form a bond together on how we're going to solve problems. And that's why listening to our constituents is so absolutely critical, because people need to have faith and trust in our government, and we need to do everything possible that we can to facilitate that. So thank you for this wonderful question, and I hope by answering this we can reinforce that we will embody this every single day.
Oh, it's only a minute now?
Oh my
gosh.
A minute and a half.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we got everyone, we got to be clear on the rules, okay. Step one of listening is showing up. On their doorsteps, at events, at community events, answering phone calls, answering emails, and truly listening. And not just to the people who agree with you, not to the people who have the same letter next to your name as theirs. You have to listen. Okay, thank you. I'm still in the 2-minute mindset. And I like, Jake, that you said, listen to understand. People truly want to be heard, and they want to know that they are valued. And the recent survey from Utah Foundation found that one of the top concerns of voters right now is they do not feel heard. And I think if you have a body that is not being held accountable, because it is groupthink, it is a supermajority, who do they have to answer to? And I think voters are tired of that. I am the mother to a neurodiverse son, and his world is very different than most people's world. And it has taught me to see things in a different way and to listen in a different way. And we are more alike than we are different. Despite what we might see on social media and what's happening with the with the election this year. So I'm here to listen to every person, no matter your political affiliation or any background that you come from.
This is actually a lot of course, this will be for Jake. First of all, do you support the Utah Fits All Scholarship? And second, do you feel like it has enough accountability considering it uses taxpayer dollars?
Yeah, great question. On the surface, yes, I do support the scholarship because I believe in parents' right to choose their child's education. But I do believe, and I've put this out in many mailers and emails that I'm sure people are getting, I think there absolutely needs to be more regulation put on it. We have to be able to see what those tax dollars are actually doing for parents. If they're gonna go to public education and we can track those test scores, we need to be able to do the same with all education.
Very succinctly, I do not support the Utah Fits scholarship. In fact, I am somewhat concerned about even using the term Utah Fits. In many ways, it strikes me as almost like Madison Avenue type marketing when this voucher program came about. You know, right now, the state of Utah is number 49 in the country for per pupil spending. And diverting our publicly collected money for private education just betrays the commitment that we have made to educate our children in the public school system. Now, having said that, I can tell you there are certainly people who do wonderful work in homeschooling, and I admire them. I think that our private schools in this school district are wonderful, and I admire them as well. But there are many things I admire, but that doesn't mean that the public taxpayer needs to be responsible. And the other thing I wanted to clarify for people is that, and Stacy knows this as a member of the school board, state gives the school district $4,400 per person. How much is the Fits All scholarship? $8,000. Let's explain the difference there.
All right, okay. As a school board member, we absolutely have to be advocating for the students in our district, and Ogden School District is unique because we also have one of the highest rates of socioeconomically disadvantaged families. We have a Hispanic Latino majority of students. Our families are struggling, and so the Utah Fits All scholarship disproportionately impacts our students and also our students in special education. And my son spent 13 years in the district as a SPED student. We had to fight tooth and nail for everything that he had. So taking resources away from students like that is a disservice. And to Rosemary's point, where we are spending $4,400 for our students in our classrooms and allowing families $8,000 per student for the Utah Fits All scholarship, I would be for a program if it matched what the students in our public schools were receiving. And it has to have some guardrails because parents able to get skiing lessons and horseback riding lessons and trampolines for their students, where in my district, we had to do a truth in taxation and put the burden on our homeowners in our district to get an extra $54 from our residents to supplement our district just to have art, just for our students to have art. I don't think it's fair to our taxpayers to put that burden on them, but that was a direct result of the impacts of the Utah Fits All scholarship.
I was gonna say, give us takes on my next good time, because I totally agree with Stacy. I just was gonna add on, as being a public school teacher in my past life, I know how challenging it is to ensure that your students have all the resources that they need. And it really, it makes me very impatient and intolerant of this idea that we're already funding our current system enough, because we're not. And we brag about our great results from what we're doing, but that's because we have such wonderful staff, educators, administrators, people doing the best they can to help to support those students. And of course, families and students as well working hard. But I'd much rather put those funds into this current system and then find other ways later if we need to do something.
This is from the cartoon. Okay, we will start with Rosemary. Rosemary, define transparency as you see it in your role as a leader in Utah.
That's a great question, and it actually follows along the lines of listening. Because to be transparent involves people recognizing what you stand for and what you do. And so that's one of the reasons that we have, in the course of my legislative year, during the legislative session, we have weekly newsletters so that people can know what I'm voting on. They have the opportunity to meet with me every week when we have either town halls or strolling with your rep, and some of you are strolled with me before. And one of the things I also wanted to say as far as transparency is I am absolutely committed to having my calendar be transparent. In fact, by making it transparent, I might be able to actually figure out where I'm supposed to be. So I'm all in favor of that. And for instance, when I respond to someone who writes to me through my legislative email, which by the way is all public, in my signature block is the opportunity to sign up to receive the newsletter and know all about the events that are coming up. So anybody who contacts me, even if you
Time.
Let's give it up for the timer.
Go.
calling out the politics.
Okay. I am by nature a transparent person, probably to a fault. I have a book called The Things We Don't Talk About. And I believe that being authentic and transparent is a very valuable trait. And so that is something just by nature. As a school board member, we are held to standards of transparency and accountability. That's why we have our meetings set up the way we do. It's why, the systems of government, why we post our agendas and our minutes and making sure the public knows. And we always need to act in that manner that we are serving on behalf of constituents. So the transparency and accountability is huge. And again, voters right now don't feel like they're getting that from their legislature. We see that with the amendments that they tried to pass, they weren't going through the proper channels of making sure that they had been advertised for 2 months prior to being put on the ballot. They were pushing them through with very deceptive language. And we saw that the Utah Supreme Court said, nah, we're not going to do that this year on the ballot. And I think that speaks to accountability and transparency. There was a lot of sneakiness happening, and I'm glad to see that we're starting to hold people accountable. And when I am elected, I will uphold that. It is extremely important to the people who put me in office, residents of Utah, that I'm accountable and transparent for all.
Well, transparency to me, I think I discussed it a little bit earlier that, people are welcome to reach out and talk with me, but I did also attempt to release my calendar as well, because I really do believe that it's your right as the public to know what I'm doing, where I'm spending my time. So I tried to really kind of even stretch that beyond what my council role is necessarily and say, okay, these are the boards I'm serving on, these are the people I'm having lunch with, and the mayor was just in it, put that in there, just anything that I was doing that might impact or make people think that I'm talking about politics or the issues that we're facing in our city. So, and I'm committed to continuing to do that. There's nobody that I'm meeting with that you all should not know about, right? Also, another piece of transparency to Stacy's point, in our public meetings, they can be very ostentatious. Yeah, very formal, I should say, very formal. And they also can be very intimidating to people when they want to come and talk to us. So that's something we really tried to do in our council chambers, make it a little bit less formal and make sure that people feel comfortable coming up to talk with us. One of the ways that we've done that is a lot of times in the past, our work sessions were not public. You can come in person to our work sessions, but a lot of regular public didn't know that those existed in the first place, and that we talk about issues for weeks on end before it actually comes to the public meeting. So after the pandemic, we continued to have those viewed through our website or through Facebook and YouTube so that people know that those meetings are happening. So I've definitely put things in place to make us more transparent as a body.
Well, I think we've gotten 3 really good definitions so far. I really agree. I think transparency in the role of being in the legislature, I think is putting myself where my constituents are, right? I agree with the newsletters. I agree with strolling in the park with your rep. I agree with all of it. Wherever we can get in order to give that information over to those who elected us, they're the ones who need to be the decisions to let us know how to vote as representatives. Right? The thing that I despise the most is when a new representative gets elected and they say, I think we need to do this, and I'm voting this, and I'm doing that. Well, that's not what you were elected to do. You were elected to be a voice for us, the people. And that's what I'm promising to do as that representative.
Okay, we're back to Stacy now. How are you supporting and promoting communities of color?
I exist. I have lived my entire life as a biracial woman. My dad is from the Philippines and my mom is from New Jersey. And growing up, we grew up on naval bases around the country, and there were often many other Filipino families there because the U.S. Navy heavily recruited from that country. So my father came here to serve this nation. And I didn't realize until I was a little older that being the product of a biracial marriage, people look at you a little bit differently. And I started seeing it. And then as a woman, an older woman, and especially in Utah, where we do know it's a little less diverse than some other places around the country, I showed up in a lot of places where no one else looked like me. And it does make a difference, and it does matter. And so that is why I'm so passionate about being in places where historically people like me have not been there. And I want to kind of blaze that trail for others behind me. Right now on our board, our vice president of our school board is the second Latina in the history of the school board. And I'm the first Filipina elected to that body. And I will be excited to be the first Filipina elected to the Utah State Legislature. I think, it's just time for more representation. And so I show up by being myself and showing up as being the example for others as well.
Okay, well, first of all, the way that I support communities of color is that I acknowledge my own positionality in the spaces where I go and think and reflect about that quite a bit. About my privilege of the places, my education, my income, my position in society. The one way that I have found my way in the world is through education. So I have quite a bit of education. So I always think about those issues when I'm in those spaces. I work closely with and go to a lot of events and volunteer for organizations. I'm a member of the NAACP. I also help to support other kind of community events like our Marshall White annual events that we have there. And in my day job and also in my past life as a teacher, I'm a data-driven person. And so I look at a lot of data around outcomes for people. And unfortunately, we are up against a battle of systemic issues that have outlasted all of us. And I don't know if I'm ever going to work myself out of a job. I work on equity initiatives for Select Health. So I look at data every day around how our hiring practices, how we're going about retaining and building pathways for career growth for people in our organization. And a lot of times people shy away from the issue of race when they're looking at those things. Certainly there's other factors too, like gender, things like that. But this is something I look at every day to ensure that we're actually meeting and reflecting the communities we serve.
I don't get any breaks. I never take any the full time anyway. I don't really necessarily look at it as a race issue, right? I want to work with somebody who's the most qualified to give me the best information. Groups that I've worked with before, Path Forward Utah, they've done some phenomenal things here. When I was county party chair, we also brought Dr. Ben Carson into Weber County to try and be an example and show he's got an incredible story where he's come from and where he's made it to. I see it more as talking about the issues and bringing the best people in to talk about them.
My background, and I know that you're getting tired of hearing me talk about being an obstetrician, but what I wanted to share is that for my entire professional career, I cared for people from all walks of life. From diverse places geographically when I served overseas and in diverse ethnic groups, including a fair number of folks from the Philippines, but from everywhere. And having that comfort with people who are different than me is really important to be able to understand, and allowed me to be comfortable immersing myself in our multicultural communities here in Ogden. My website is translated into Spanish, recognizing that 36% of House District 10 speak Spanish. My palm cards are also in Spanish, and I believe that it's really important to acknowledge the diversity that we have even here in Weber County and honor it by having literature be in the language that a person would be able to understand.
Define government overreach, and do you believe that that is happening within our state? And how can we stop it? That's a long question.
I think I have a pretty short answer to that. The government outreach are those particular amendments. We were just talking about people doing something just because they can, because they hold a supermajority. Not listening to all of us that say, hey, we need to have a fairer process. For example, with the redistricting process, right? So the Utah Supreme Court just said, hey, there was a ballot initiative that was proposed by the people and voted into law, and you didn't follow that process. And so now we have to go back to the drawing board to recreate the districts once again. So that's definite overreach. And then also, what was the second part of the question?
How to stop it.
Oh, how to stop it. Oh, we elect more diverse people to office, right? So if we don't have a supermajority, then people aren't allowed to make those decisions without all of us being at the table. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Do I think there's government overreach? Absolutely, I do. I agree with everybody up here. I think the amendments were done way too fast, right? Way too fast. Talking about every other topic here, transparency, everything, all of that could have helped those amendments pass if we had used some of that in the forethought. How to stop it? I don't necessarily think it's about a supermajority. I mean, I understand there is one, but people around the state keep electing to have this supermajority. So it obviously is something that they want, right? They're okay with. How to stop government overreach? I think it's getting people to have more common sense, real world understanding on how to solve these issues, not just tax the craziness out of all of us to support funding, whatever projects it is that we've got coming.
Well, as a city representative, I can tell you that I witness government overreach all the time. And I'd like to, one of the things that concerns me the most about the overreach is the fact that it also means that the legislature has decided to essentially disrespect the other organizations that are set up to perform a particular act of government. So for instance, local school boards. When we talk about what books should be at the state level, we have local school boards. Similarly, and I don't know if we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we had a far-reaching bill, HB 261, involving diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this completely disrespected the authority of the state Board of Higher Education, the university presidents. If we had an issue with how a particular program was being run, there are ways to do it rather than the legislature coming down and by fiat declaring it with, and that's the way that unintended consequences appear. So the way to get around it is to be aware of it, have it be transparent, and vote no.
Just to be clear, our legislature isn't necessarily elected to be a supermajority. It was drawn that way, and many of our electeds run opposed. So it's an unfortunate outcome of the system. So government overreach, absolutely. This last legislative session saw 273 bills just in education, just to address education. And 166 of those bills passed. And it put all these additional reporting needs on the Utah School Board of Education. It put more responsibility on local school boards, on our educators, unnecessary red tape for our already overworked and underpaid educators. That is government overreach. That is them seeping down into the local school boards. We have a great, robust policy in place to address the sensitive material. We already had that in place with local school boards. And now the legislature has said, no, we're going to take it a step further with that government overreach and now make it so that a small minority of school districts can now impact what is available in red in the entire state. That's government overreach. So I think we need to, even with our cities, our municipalities, there are things that are not St. George that are going to impact things differently than Ogden, that are going to impact things differently than Logan. So having that happen at the state level isn't necessarily the best for everyone.
This is a long one. Speaking of data, this past legislative session, we saw the dismantling of the DEI, which Nick brought up, especially in higher ed. The concern is that this may be one of many to follow some efforts that are not addressing equity issues. How do you see yourself promoting equity in healthy education throughout our high schools, throughout our elementary schools, and in higher ed? How do you see yourself promoting that?
Well, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I have all the answers, because I surely don't. I mean, you two work on this every day, right, your day job, so I think this is a perfect example where I would want to work with people that know these answers a heck of a lot better than I do to try and come up with a plan that works for everyone.
Sarah, could you repeat that one? Okay. Speaking of data, this past legislative session, they dismantled the DEI, which has a great effect on public education and higher education. How do you see yourself promoting equity in education on all levels?
Well, I think with regard to this issue of equity, we are all committed as a government providing public education to providing the best opportunity for every single individual. Now, does everybody come in at the same level? Of course not. And how do we adjust to that? How do we adjust to a child who doesn't speak English? They will need extra. How do we adjust to people at Weber State whose parents have never entered a high school, much less higher education? We have to acknowledge that there is benefit and to achieve equity in lifting individuals who are deserving of assistance. And so I will continue to support that and realize that my next two people who will answer this question are specialists in this, and like Jake, I'm looking forward to learning from them. However, I have to say we have to get back to the basics of what we do. Weber State has the best return on investment in the top 10 in the United States because of the programs that they initiated to lift up everyone. So why mess with it?
I'm gonna have to talk like that, that part, what was the commercial with the miniature cars, we've got to talk really fast, I think it's just like. Micro machine. In November of 2020, in the freezing cold on the steps of the Capitol, a document was signed called the Utah Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Racial Compact. And that was signed on by Governor Cox, it was signed on by Governor Herbert, it was signed on by hundreds of community leaders, and some of them are in this room today, and I am one of those people who signed on to that document. 4 years later, less than 4 years later, What happened? Our state made a commitment 4 years ago that we knew we had issues around racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. And now we have gone the exact opposite direction. The dismantling and how it's already impacting our higher education, the cultural centers being taken out, the women's center, the LGBTQ center, how it's impacting us as a local school district, because we know that our historically marginalized students have worse outcomes for graduation. We had programs in place and partnerships in place with OTEC, with Weber State. Weber State is trying to be a Hispanic serving institution. All of these pieces work together, and taking out DEI is going to have long-lasting negative impacts for everyone in the state, everyone. And it's not just about race, it's about people with disabilities, it's about women, it's about, oh, I only have 8 seconds, y'all. It's so much more. And I think it was a very short-sighted bill that is going to truly, truly hurt Utahns for a long, long time.
And I'll just egg on to, I'll listen to you like, and also to what Stacey was saying. But I think the first thing that I would say that we need to acknowledge that we have hurt people by enacting this legislation to begin with. The fact that we can't say 3 words in academic institutions right now is appalling to me. We live in America, we have the right to say words. And I just read over a document that a professor sent out saying the guidelines for what he was supposed to be presenting in a lecture that they were supposed to be giving. And it actually has guidelines around how it makes the audience feel. So now you're not only holding people accountable for not saying particular words in our academic institutions in Utah, you are also holding someone accountable for how you feel in the audience. So if I make you feel a little upset in that setting, that person can be censored, or I don't even know, they could lose their job. So to me, that is completely unacceptable, and we need to face that fact that we've done something so damaging. And then we also need to acknowledge that some of these programs were actually in the midst of being researched to see what the outcomes were for people that were involved in them. And now we've pulled it all back and said that we don't even want to look at that research anymore. So I think it's been quite an overreach. And I'm sorry, I get a little passionate about it. And I think there are many things that we can do. A lot of people are still working in these spaces, running programs that are helping to support students. So we need to make sure that we're still supporting them, but we need to stand up as a community and say it's not okay.
Okay, Rosemary. Some people are very concerned about students with disabilities and special health care needs. What do you think we need to do in the state of Utah to help students be successful in school? What would you promote?
Thank you. That's a great question. And many times we don't speak about individuals with disabilities. I'm glad that Stacey mentioned it earlier in our conversation, because there are individualized plans that actually already do occur. And in fact, one of the bills that I did this past year, it had passed unanimously, was to make sure that children always have the ability to receive medications for medical emergencies, even if a nurse is not present at the school. If a nurse isn't present at the school, that doesn't take away the fact that an emergency exists. And so we instituted a training program for that. But this also goes back to the whole issue of funding and taking away those valuable dollars. We know that we need to spend more money to adequately educate children with disabilities. And in doing so, we realize that that is our obligation as a state in providing education and opportunity to everyone, is that we need to spend funds and pay the professionals who are helping these children on their journeys, whether it be speech language pathologists, the school nurses. There's a whole group of individuals that are responsible for success in this space.
In talking about students with disabilities, obviously I have one of those. And I saw firsthand, it's hard for educators who have, especially when they have so many students in their classroom who are probably on IEPs, that individualized education plan. And we've done a good job of getting our teachers their raises, but we have a higher turnover of specifically special education teachers, because that's already grueling work. These students, they deserve an education just like everyone else. And so when we're writing these policies that take away resources from them, it's going to hurt them more than your typical students. I have been serving on this Autism After 21 initiative. It's a statewide initiative. I've been on that board for 3 years. Because what happens with our students with disabilities once they age out of the public school system is that the resources really dry up after that, because they're no longer obligated to receive anything from the state. And one of the outcomes of that research study was that organizations, businesses, institutions of higher education, they need to be focusing efforts on diversity, equity, inclusion. That was one of the calls to action from the 3-year research study. So just to speak to, again, the negative outcomes of anti-DEI is students with disabilities. It hurts people like my son, and I take that very.
Agreed. I think that we just need more funding. We just read an article in the paper the other day that talks about over 7,000 people in our state are waiting on the list. And this isn't just students, but in our whole state that are waiting for services in this area that we all should be helping to provide, because that will only help us. We're looking for workforce. We're looking for people to help in our communities, to be civically engaged. And if people are really living and having not their basic needs are not being met, then it's very hard for them to actually achieve all those other things too. So I think that we have to find a way to solve that problem. Having that amount of people on a waiting list, some of them for up to 10 years to actually get the services that they already qualify for, by the way. And it's just the most severe people that end up at the top of the list versus having some services for everybody along the line. So we need more funding, and we need to really understand the impact of how these programs help people.
Yeah, I obviously think all of us up here agree, more funding for education. That's been something that I've been touting my whole campaign. My sister is a paraprofessional, right? She got involved with teaching because of her son has special needs, right? I mean, I think this is something that not just a few families, right, but a lot of families can connect with this, right? Whether they had the resources when they needed them or if they didn't. Everybody has a personal experience with this, and I absolutely have seen that we need more funding for these kids so that they can have the fair education they deserve.
I'm buying a new.
Just a second. One.
Maybe we'll just send Jim in. Oh, 1 minute, they'll never. What is your opinion on the use of renewable energy as a form of climate and ecological control in Utah? And what other ideas do you have if you haven't?
My first one.
You're it.
I guess you are.
Yeah.
I think anything that we can be doing to improve renewable energy, we need to be doing. And obviously this is not my area of expertise, but as a policymaker, I need those subject matter experts at the table. So whether it's solar, whether it's wind energy, whether it's geothermal, we need to be looking at the trade-offs of whatever decisions we're making. Is it affordable? Is it accessible? What are the, what are the pros and cons of whatever energy solutions we decide to go for? We know that Weber State is doing a really good job of reducing their carbon footprint. I think that we need that to kind of be the blueprint for what we can be doing on a larger scale. We have finite resources in a lot of ways, and my concern for the state is as we continue to grow, and we know we are growing, what are we doing to address our water issues? What are we doing to make sure that we can continue having, our air quality is not great. We were like worst in the nation this year. We need to be addressing all of these environmental issues. And I feel like this last session, especially, we had so many bills that were kind of these culture war bills that they seem to be pushed to the forefront of what was prioritized. And at the same time, we sunset a committee that was looking at earthquake safety. We sunset that committee to not do the work of an impending natural disaster.
Yeah, I could go on about this for a while, so I'll wait. Okay, so I just want to say, this is definitely not an area of expertise that I had. I definitely don't feel like I'm an expert yet, but sometimes when you're in these seats, you have to learn about something very fast and go to your expert. So I'm all for using as much renewable energy as we can and finding ways to make it better as we move along and being innovative in the process. I'm open to other ideas as well. But I've been working with Weber State Sustainability for the past few years on a project called the Community Renewable Energy Program, which maybe some people remembered as HB 411 at the time. So it's a program where cities were able to come together to create a plan to become energy neutral by 2030, which is definitely a very aggressive goal. But it was a way to be involved in this very innovative process along with other cities to see if we were able to do that. And prior to that, Ogden City never had actually a goal to meet any of these measures, whether it be carbon neutrality or using renewable sources. So I've been excited to be involved in that project, and I've learned a lot more about it than I probably ever wanted to know, maybe. But I definitely agree that we should work closely with experts like Weber State. They've just gotten another award for the great work they've done. And it involves many things that are renewable, and we should learn from their progress because they're reinvesting everything that they gain back into doing that again. And so I think that's a really great example.
Yeah, I agree, Stacey. We need to look at every option that we have, right? We need to figure out what is going to be the most cost effective, what's going to be the most beneficial for Utah, and then put the choice to the voters, right? What do they want? What do they see is going to be fit? Because it's our money, your money that's going to be spent in order to get these services. I'm sure like everybody else here, I spent a lot of time growing up at Pineview and at Willard Bay. I want to protect those. I want to keep those as beautiful as they are. Water is a huge issue. We all know that, right? One question I've always had is why do we drain our reservoirs at the end of the summer to prepare for the runoff? That makes no sense to me, right? But get a hold of somebody at the water district. Go ahead and see how easy that is. I think yeah, good, great. That'd be great to know. That's some of the transparency we'd love, right? I think we need to look at every option on the table and do the best that we can for the state of Utah, keep it as beautiful as we can.
Thank you for letting me talk about clean energy and shown that in addition to decreasing our carbon footprint, they've shown that this is economically viable. And in fact, Angela had mentioned that they're allowed to reinvest, but they were able to show by going with renewables, solar and geothermal, that they were able to save 30% of their energy budget. That's a big, big savings. And this is something that can translate through our state. Now, one of the things that's going to be critical is that we also invest in the transmission lines. We know that our electricity demands are going to be going up, whether it be for data centers or electric vehicles or whatever. There are many, many demands on electric power going forward. And we have shown that we can have an always on program that does not require coal using solar panels and commercial grade battery storage. So I am really excited that Utah is leading the way in these forces, and we're going to be better off at the end of the day for embracing this.
I know, like, oh no, getting a little worried.
You've sort of addressed this a little bit. So as housing is the #1 issue for the Utah voters, I'm getting that off paper. I'm not going to say that is true, but it is important. As housing is the #1 issue for Utah voters, what would be your ideas or solutions for Utah? Because they're flocking in here.
There are a lot of ideas, that's true. Well, I think one challenge that we have, I'll say, I don't have an answer for all of the ideas. But I think one challenge that we do have is sometimes the legislature is passing laws that actually apply as a blanket policy across the whole state for all cities to do similar activities. And I really appreciate when they have options, because Ogden City is gonna be dealing with the housing issue differently than West Haven's gonna be dealing with it. And so I think there's many different ideas that communities can take on themselves based on their own unique needs. If the community is all built out like Ogden City is, we're doing a lot of redevelopment and other kinds of projects, infill development, whereas in another place, they're gonna be thinking about infrastructure and thinking about how you build neighborhoods. We were joking the other day that West Haven doesn't have a grocery store, for example. They have all this wonderful new housing, but that kind of infrastructure is not there. So that's also very important to build good communities. There's been a lot of great innovative programs that Ogden City has been involved in that I think can be used in other places, and a lot of other cities have taken advantage of. We have an Own an Ogden program, which is a specific help with down payment assistance for new homeowners, and depending on their income level, etc. And there's a special caveat for teachers and police officers and public safety in the city, so that's helpful. And we have a lot of other innovative programs too, which I don't have time to talk about.
This is a great question. It's my background is in mortgages, in the real estate world there. I love the Own an Ogden grant, used it many times for clients to buy homes. One thing that I think we need to do is bill an SB 240. That was passed last year. It was a $20,000 grant to first-time home buyers, but it only let you get it if it was a new construction home. And those home prices for new construction, there was a report just put out by the Kem C. Gardner Institute 2 days ago. 80% of Utahns can't afford a median priced home in Utah. 80%. That's insane. I think we could build on 240 and expand it to do renovations and rehabs. There's a loan product called a 203K mortgage that does exactly that. You can do all your rehab renovations, throw it all into your first term mortgage and get the house that you want. So you go buy some fixer upper, put $100,000 into it, and you're in your house for a heck of a lot cheaper than that $450,000 purchase. I think that's something that we can do very easily.
I like this question because I think we'll get a chance to talk about the many layers of intervention that it's going to take to decrease home prices. And one of them, and first of all, all of the points that have already been made are fantastic ideas, but some of the other innovations are things like community land trusts, because of almost half of the cost of a house involves the land. And if there are areas in both Moab and Salt Lake City where land is donated and houses are built on that land, and so people are only having to pay for the house itself. These are deed restricted, but one of our other goals is to have homes be occupied by the owner, and limiting the incredible takeover by large corporations who are buying up our precious housing stock. So that's something that I think individual communities are better equipped to deal with from a regulatory standpoint, but it's something that we really need to pay attention to. And to your point about first-time home buyers, the purpose of that bill was to incentivize building. However, it basically only gives the down payment for a new property. I support it being used for any property because we believe in everyone being able to achieve the American dream.
Look at that, working across the aisle. I'm not even looking yet.
Okay, there were so many good nuggets already shared, so I want to take it a little bit further. My district is very diverse in that it covers parts of Weber, Morgan, and Summit County. So the housing issues are very different, even just across those different counties. In Park City, a huge majority of the workers in Park City cannot afford to live there. I think that is a huge travesty. People with neurodiversity and disability Again, these young adults, once they age out of the public school system and those resources that are available to them, one of their top needs when they're young adults and when they're older and when their caregivers are gone is housing. Who is thinking about them? Yeah, I'm concerned about first-time home buyers. I'm concerned about the fact that when we bought our home 10 years ago, we would not be able to afford it right now. Those things concern me. What really concerns me is what happens to my Hayden when we're not here. I had my friend who is the homeless advocate for Ogden Police Department call me one time because she had a 50-something-year-old man who had been living in a senior living facility with his mom. Mom passed away and they did not know where to send this man. And that is my worst nightmare. So when we're talking about housing issues in Utah, yeah, we've got this huge pile of things that we need to work on, but then we also have a whole other demographic. We have seniors in Park City who are being aged out of their homes. So I want to make sure we're looking at policy that we're thinking about all Utahns.
Just talking about all of this.
You're gonna get agents.
I'm about done. Two questions, please. Number one, in 3 words, you don't go expand. Just tell me what your top 3 priorities are if you were to win this election. If you were to win the election, what are your top 3 things that you would look at first?
I think it's, yeah, well, housing affordability, so that's my background. Property taxes, keeping those low, and mental health for sure, right?
Healthcare, one word. Environment, one word, and well-being of all Utahns.
That was 3.
4.
Yeah.
Oh, so sorry.
Education. Trying to think how I can say it one more. It's not gonna be, it's housing affordability and accessibility. They're all in one.
That was one. word.
HAA.
That was all one, right? Hashtag housing affordability and accessibility. And for families like ours, like disability services. My son's 4,614 on that wait list for DSPD. Sorry, that was way more than.
All really hard to follow. I'm gonna say my priorities are people, communities, and justice. You guys took all.
She did without cheating.
As we have gone to the Lantern House this last, we're gonna do it for 4 weeks. We've already registered 50 people who are residents of the Lantern House or have lived there but have a different address. That's a lot of people, and they are very, very thankful. So what do you plan to do, or what kind of ideas do you have to help to reduce homelessness in Utah?
Thank you. That's a great question. Well, to reduce homelessness in Utah, one of the very first steps is to prevent it from happening in the first place. It's way less expensive to keep someone in their home than to deal with the expensive costs of housing somebody or not housing them in that way. So preventing homelessness in the first place is going to be key. Secondly, and this is something that former Speaker, President Niederhauser, who's the homeless, he doesn't like to be called SAR, but has reinforced is that in addition to housing, it's going to be critical that people consistently have wraparound services of mental health, occupational support, and education. One of the very first bills that I passed in the legislature was that every homeless person would have a state identification card using the address of the homeless service provider. Having that state ID was pivotal to being to access services, resources, funding, and to do things like open up a banking account and, put yourself on the path to exiting homelessness. So those are just a few ideas, and I look forward to the rest of my colleagues and their ideas.
Yes, I love all of those ideas, and I think it's so true that we need to go upstream and look at the issues that do lead to homelessness, because it is so many things. It's tied to mental health. It's tied to our economy. It's tied to familial relationships. In Ogden School District, we have 1 in 10 students. 1 in 10 of our students is experiencing some form of homelessness, and that means they're couch surfing, they're staying with friends, they're living out of cars. So we absolutely need to be serving those students. And part of that was that we, in all of our high schools and in one of our elementary schools, we have resource centers that we have built for them to help serve them as they're going through these hardships. Also, and I think this kind of would go along with my last question, the answer to housing, is I would really love to see communities of tiny houses. I don't understand why that isn't something we can't do. We have these big mansions, and we know that people in Utah are having less children. We don't need to continue building homes for people with 6, 7, 8 kids. I would love to see communities, kind of communal communities of tiny houses, and having people be able to have 1 and 2 person homes that are affordable and accessible. And I think that would be a way that we could also address, like, helping people get into homes.
Well, I love all those ideas. And I would just say that thinking about it just a little bit differently too, getting a little bit farther upstream. I want to think about how we build our communities and how we create social networks, because that is definitely part of the issue as well, is that we have a kind of an epidemic of isolation and loneliness happening in our communities that definitely feeds into mental health crises, but also makes it so if you have some kind of crisis in your life and you don't have those connections either with family or friends or other kind of social relationships, you don't have other people to help you or to help lean on in those situations. So you can go to a social service provider to help you and support you so that you can stay housed if you're having one of those crises. But we really need to think about how we're building community and how we make sure that we're checking in on our neighbors and really thinking about all of those issues that people are facing and how can we come together to help people to get further upstream. I think that's really important too. We have wonderful resources in Weber County, and I'm sure across the state as well, that help support people. And we found during the pandemic, for example, that a lot of people didn't know how to access those. Maybe they had never had that happen to them before, where they were food insecure. And so they didn't realize that we have these wonderful resources in the community. So making sure people are aware of those resources, but then also bolstering those not-for-profits so that they're not always scrambling for dollars would be helpful too.
Yeah, great things. I look at it as this is just a conversation about compassion, right? And how are we going to help these people that are having some of the worst times of their life? One real world example is our sheriff here in Weber County. He had a bond last year that he tried to get passed that he was going to build a great facility out on 12th Street and bring all these local nonprofits in to help with this exact thing as people got out of jail and maybe they didn't have a home or they needed mental health, whatever, medical health, whatever it was. He was going to have them there on site. Since that bond didn't pass, that's something I'm very passionate about. He needs that help. I don't know if anybody has gone and toured the jail, but their mental health facility is the size of half of this table, right? You sit in there with your doctor and you're supposed to expose all of these issues that you're working on. And that's just not okay. So I think if we're going to focus on homelessness and all of the issues that go into that, we make it our police officers' responsibility to kind of solve and work on this issue. I think we need to give them all of the resources and tools that they need in order to make this the most compassionate and helpful situation for those people.
Last question.
First,
It's just,
I think it is.
a lot of time and money has been wasted in party disagreements. What would you do to keep everyone focused on the issue and not the party?
Oh my gosh, well, I'm glad I get to answer this one because I think I have the most experience here being the party chair. That was the biggest thing I dealt with was throughout any party, no matter what it is, you've got people across the whole different spectrum, right? And what you've got to do is you've got to work to appease the masses, right? You're not gonna love it. I may not love it, but it's gonna fall somewhere in the middle and we can at least live with it. What I hate is when we push party platitudes just to push party platitudes. Let's have a real conversation about the issues. And that goes on both sides, right? Any party, any affiliation, whatever it is, we need to have a real conversation. And the second people get up away from the table because their feelings got hurt by whatever was said, that just hurts everybody involved, right? That doesn't get a solution, that doesn't put us forward, doesn't help anybody. So that's what I'm committing to, is to have those difficult conversations. We may disagree, we may be more aligned than you think, but at least let's have the conversation and figure out where we are and maybe find a solution.
Thank you for those comments, Jake. That was very informative. I appreciated that. And, you know, it's really clear to me that balance in representation is really important. And that means approaching problems not from a partisan lens. I think that has been really a difficult process here in Utah. One of the things that I would like to see happen is have party leadership call out bad behavior when it happens, and speak when people say things that are derogatory to members of a different political party. They should be censured for that. And I think that would be at least the beginning of trying to overcome this divide by having the people on the extremes not be reinforced, amplified on social media and so forth, but instead do things like I do belong to this group, Braver Angels, where there is a structured process for discussing contentious topics. And I would encourage all of you to think about joining Braver Angels. Their t-shirt says, "This is the place," for the Utah section, "this is the place to build a house united." So I encourage everybody to think about that and think about ways that we can do this.
I think it would be such a fun social experiment if we didn't have our political party affiliations by our names on the ballot, on our websites, wherever. And I say that because we did some polling in my race, and just based on name and party affiliation, my opponent was at 44% and I was at 33%. But after messaging and bios, I gained 12 points and he gained 1. We were dead even at 45% because people were now willing to look past the D and see the issues that I care about. And because what I care about is nonpartisan. Because whether you hate Democrats, whatever kind of thing you think about them, you stereotype us as baby killers or whatever it is, you understand what it means to worry about your family. You understand the struggle of paying your bills and worrying about the outcomes for your kids. And those are the things that I'm running on. Those are the issues that I care about. And those nonpartisan issues are what I'm going to do when I'm elected, because I'm going to represent everyone, whether you voted for me or not. And I would like to see, honestly, more of nonpartisan across the board. The fact that our state school board is a partisan seat, I think that's a disservice to our students. I love that our local school board and our local government is nonpartisan, and I think that's how we get work done. We need to stop with the labels.
Getting better.
I know what I'm gonna say. I would say that I do have quite a bit of experience in this space. Number one, having served on Ogden City Council for the past almost 8 years, we definitely have disagreements on the council, our varying perspectives, etc. But when it comes down to the value of doing what's best for the community, we end up working across the aisle and beyond those divides that we're talking about to come with a solution that is the best for the community. So I feel pretty strongly about this idea that we can do that, because when you talk about values alone or messaging alone, it's a very different picture. I actually participated in a project with Weber State, I think it was last year, called the Unity Project. And anybody can go and sign up for this. So you sign up and they match you up with a person around the country, and you have a conversation with this person together, and you answer questions about values or about issues that you're interested in. And I honestly felt like this young man, I think he was Pakistani, he was living outside of Chicago, which I'm from the Midwest originally, but a very different perspective. I was like, oh, they just couldn't find someone that was a different party than me. I thought that the whole time. Every question, we went back and forth together talking about these topics, and all the similar ones that we were talking about tonight. At the end, we found out we both voted for different presidential candidates. So I think when we actually talk about the issues and not just the partisanship, that's where we can actually get the real work done, just like Stacey said.
You're good. I want you to take all the time. Well, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to have these conversations, right? I think it's important that we have these conversations. I think it's important that we see where we all stand, because we do all have different ideas and different viewpoints. I'm proud to be the sole Republican nominee for this seat. I'm very proud that I served my party and did what we did. We achieved some amazing things there, working together. And that's the same kind of spirit that I want to bring to the House legislature. I want to work with people. I want to find solutions. And I want to be the voice that the people elect me to be. I want to be there to vote your will and your desire in the state legislature.
Okay, you have 2 minutes to tell us why we should vote for you. And I also, before you do that, I want to acknowledge Betty Sawyer here. She is also does most of our debates with us. We co-sponsor them together. And she is the president of the NAACP Ogden branch, right?
Yes, Carrie, could I take a
minute? By George.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. Not a question, but something to put on all of your minds to think about. One is benefit cliff. We talk about this circle of not having and all of that, trying to make ends meet. And we know that along the way, people that are receiving critical benefits like childcare or healthcare, if they make a slight amount more than what those eligibility thresholds are, they lose everything. And we all know that the cost of housing and childcare are skyrocketing. So I need you to think about that. The other, I was on a call this evening around healthcare and the Medicaid unwinding that took place. Okay, started in April, and we've all been trying to get people to sign up, because it wasn't that they weren't eligible. Numbers could be different or changed, and so they were all procedural issues or administrative issues that hundreds of thousands of people have lost their Medicaid benefit. And Utah, I'm on a call with 150 people. Utah was #1 with the highest rate of disenrollment, automatic disenrollment. So we have some work we need to do there. Thank you.
Okay. Are you first, Rosemary?
Oh, you got to go.
2 minutes and tell us how under break.
I'm not. Well, first of all, thank you again, everybody, for being here. I have thoroughly enjoyed the exchange of ideas with my colleagues, and I hope that all of you have had that same experience, no matter who you came to cheer for. I enjoyed hearing from everybody. I'd like to talk and stress that balance and representation is good for good policy. We know that this is true in the private sector, and it also is true in the public sector. During my time in the military and my time as a doctor, I approached issues without any consideration of a partisan lens. And this is what we were just talking about a minute ago. What partisan lens does there need to be with saving water and having clean air? But I take the same approach to the legislature regarding every issue with an open mind, and always keep it in mind, does this policy meet the needs of the people of Utah? That's my utmost priority. And I urge you to recognize the many ways that I've already accomplished this in the legislature in the last 4 years, And I hope that you will return me so that I can continue this progress for the future. Thank you.
I am not supposed to be here running for the Utah State Senate. I came from a home of abuse. I was a birth mom at 17 years old. I was a 3-time college dropout before I finally went back to Weber State in 2010 and graduated summa cum laude, no big deal. But nothing about my trajectory foresaw that I was going to be any type of leader, let alone now an elected school board member and now running for the state legislature. But it's because of those experiences that I have this lens of empathy, that I understand what it's like to be on food stamps and to worry if I'm gonna have them last through the month so I can feed my kid. Those struggles make me the leader that I am today, and I'm grateful for every single one of them. And I would not be here if I didn't think I was the person, and this was the time and the place for me to be here. I had an amazing job with the Utah Jazz, and I stepped down from that role in part because of the political climate against DEI, and in part because I wanted to focus my efforts on this race. That's how important it is to me. I am running against a multimillionaire who put $100,000 of his own money into his campaign account the day after I announced my candidacy. And it took me almost 10 months to raise that money just to match what he had. I am a true people of the people. I understand what it's like to worry about the issues that people in this state worry about. And I think we need that kind of perspective at the Hill. That should not be an exclusive club of people who all come from wealth and who have a certain view of this state. We need different perspectives, and I want to represent my district and the people of Utah.
Follow, okay. So I'm Angela Chaburka, and I'm running for House District 9, and I'm truly running to represent everyone, even if they're not part of my party. And I also just want to say that I have the experience and the track record of getting things done for our community that are not always easy. These conversations, these issues are not simple. They're very complex, and I've obviously worked across the aisle and built relationships of trust, not only with my colleagues, but with state and other local representatives, as well as people. So in different groups that I go to talk with and go to their community events, people know that I'm available to them in all those situations. They know my name, they know my phone number, they know how to reach out to me, and vice versa. So I think that I've built that reputation of trust and hope that people will see me in that role in the House seat as well. Honestly, I'm running for this seat because I feel impatient and frustrated that these issues are continuing in our communities and we have not solved them yet, although they're complex and challenging. And I do feel that that's partially due to the fact that we don't have more diverse representation speaking to these issues and really getting down to the root causes of the problems rather than some fancy silver bullet that might help fix them. So I'm willing to work beyond these divides that we have, but I also am willing to stand up for what's right in the situation when it's necessary. Even though it can be very difficult and it's challenging sometimes when you're the only one in the group that's saying something different than everyone else. So I hope that I'll gain your support for House District 9.
Well, my name is Jake Sawyer. I'm running for House District 9, and I look forward to getting your vote in just a couple of weeks. I'm running because I come from the grassroots. I started in a precinct meeting being elected, or a caucus meeting actually being elected as a precinct chair. And I've worked my way through there. My vision has always been, if the people will elect me, I'll go and serve and do what I need to do. I believe we need to take a compassionate look at all of these issues, right? First and foremost, because we're dealing with the people of Utah. I think if we can start with compassion, try and make it fair for everybody and make sure that everybody is receiving equally the benefits that Utah has to offer. I don't think any of us agree up here or disagree up here We all want the best for Utah. We all want to see Utah become even better, become the best state in the union. We just have different ideas on how to get about it. All of my information is up on my website, my phone number, my email. Please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. Again, I look forward to your vote. Thanks so much.
I also want to thank you for coming. These are the people who are out on the streets. They're the ones listening to what it is that you're saying. If you have questions and you want to test them, email them. Or call them and see if they'll answer. They've always answered me, but
The test.
because I screech a lot. Anyway, thank you so much. I'm very happy that all of you got here. I don't know, I'm a little confused about the ones that aren't here, but it's obvious that you guys care, so I appreciate that. Any information that you want about the league is over there. If you remember, vote411.org. Put in your address, it will pull up the people running and you'll see who answered questions. And there are loads of places that they have to answer questions. So they're all, the same ones will repeat themselves. So do that, okay? Thank you for coming.